Welcome back. You're still watching Weekend Prime. Let's focus on matters education. And last year had been marked by unprecedented happenings in Kenya's higher learning institutions, with a new funding model at the center of contention. In universities, protests erupted over unmet agreements, flawed implementation, and staff salary disputes, leading to prolonged strikes and disrupted learning. The contentious funding model faced legal hurdles. A court ruled the model unconstitutional and internal rifts within its review committee. Universities like Moi were thrust into the spotlight over mismanagement and financial crisis, sparking interventions from stakeholders and government bodies. Amid these challenges, TVET institutions achieved significant strides, including dual training programs. Here's Anne Musungu with that report.
In 2024, the new funding model constantly faced scrutiny from the National Assembly Education Committee, students and key stakeholders. Introduced 2 years ago, the initiative's effectiveness has been questioned, potentially threatening its continuation.
We are saying no to new funding model. Yes. Your parents' background cannot be used to determine your future.
Continuing to reject the new funding model, just the same way we have been rejecting it.
Go back to the old model, which was easily understood by learners, even by those ones who are issuing those loans.
These students come back for a review of your rating, they will still use the same tool to review the same student. So at the end of the day, it is a zero-sum game.
Critics accuse the president of implementing the model without sufficient consultation. Ignoring the recommendations of the Presidential Working Party on the education reforms released in 2023, the task force's report did not include funding approach, raising questions about the model's legitimacy and alignment with the sector reform.
Long live! Long live you and long live!
Long live!
Viva governors, viva!
Viva!
Despite the strong opposition, President Ruto has remained steadfast in defending the new funding model. He insists that the system focuses on addressing the varying levels of vulnerability among students and the country's need of a funding approach that prioritizes student needs over institutional interest.
We cannot continue as a nation to have an education system that shuts out millions of the children of the poor.
In a bid to salvage the funding system, in a Gazette notice, President William Ruto appointed a 129-member team to review the new funding model for university and TVET institutions. The team divided into 4 subcommittees, each tasked with specific roles, including handling appeals related to student categorization for scholarships and loans allocation.
We have seen the gazettement of 4 committees to review the new funding model. All we want to say is that we don't want reforms. All that we want is that model to be disbanded.
After going through a roller coaster ride, the new funding model yet again suffered a major blow after the High Court halted its implementation until the case challenging was heard in mid-December. The future of 234,811 students hangs in the balance after courts declared the new funding model unconstitutional. Citing a violation of Section 53 of the Constitution, Justice Chacha Mwita ruled that the funding model infringes on students' rights and that no public participation was done.
A declaration is hereby issued that the variable scholarship and loan funding model is unconstitutional for lack of public participation. An order of prohibition is hereby issued prohibiting implementation of the variable scholarship and loan funding model until the government complies with constitutional and legal requirements where necessary.
A few weeks in, rift emerged within the committee reviewing the new funding model, with a section of student leaders and university lecturers calling for the scrapping of 2 bands that students pay the highest amount in tuition fees. The talks continue, although they were scheduled to end after only 8 weeks.
We are going to Jogo House to see CS Ogamba eyeball to eyeball.
Mid-September, public universities staff across the country went to the streets demanding implementation of the 2021-2025 collective bargaining agreement, besides also pushing for standardization of allowances.
If universities have failed to implement the policy directive that requires dons to retire at 74 years, then you cannot purport that we have negotiated and agreed.
Our fellow colleagues in the public service, including the uniformed officers who are here, they have been paid by this government. They have been cushioned against the vagaries of the high inflation and the high taxation. But you, employees of public service, you have been given zero. Is that fair?
It shortly ended after 2 weeks after the unions with the Interministerial Committee agreed on a return to work formula that will see lecturers benefit from a 7% and 10% basic salary increment and an annual 4% increment.
Have a deal.
Within a month, university lecturers returned to the street, protesting the government's failure to honor the return to work agreement. The strike sparked prolonged negotiation between the union and the Interpublic University Consultative Forum, IPUCCF, with the intervention of the National Assembly Education Committee.
Figures are dropped on us, which figures do not translate to the 7%, 10% and 4% automatic annual increment.
Finally, urge the government to respect the terms and the provisions of the return to work formula. That's on 26.
I therefore officially call off the strike.
All our unions in the sector will be negotiating their CBAs at the beginning of their cycle and not at the end.
Moi University was also on the spotlight following an extended staff strike over unpaid salary and allegation of mismanagement. The crisis prompted intervention from key stakeholders, including alumni and the National Assembly Education Committee, who stepped in with efforts to address the challenges and restore stability to the institution.
University is the only university where majority of the members who make key decisions in the institution are acting. We don't have substantive officers running the institution. And we've come to conclude that it is by design that things have been made to move that way.
For the union makes us strong.
Amid mounting pressure, the government successfully negotiated a return to work agreement with Moi University staff, resolving the prolonged strike and addressing key concerns to restore normal operation at the institution. On the other hand, TVET institutions are marking significant milestones, including implementation of dual training programs, acknowledging prior learning experience, and a substantial increase in the number of TVET centers across the nation.
As a department, we invited the industry led by Rajiv, standing next to me here, and Vimal Kantaria, who are industrialists, to be able to have a conversation with them and to really come up with a task force where we were going to speak into having our young people trained and finishing up with the requisite skill that is needed in the industry, so that our industries can be able to just be in the business of production and not in the business of retraining or reskilling our young people.
Anne Musungu, KTN, Nairobi.